Imagine this. You've told the truth the entire background process, but the polygraph says you're lying. Just like that, your law enforcement career is over before it even begins. Now here's the kicker. The polygraph isn't even a real lie detector. It doesn't detect lies, it detects nerves and stress. So why do police agencies still use it? And more importantly, what does that mean for you when you sit in that chair because you want a job? This is a Law Maniac channel, and I help aspiring cops and new cops get better, and I help them get hired. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what to expect during your polygraph step by step so you don't let nerves wreck your shot at getting the badge. TV makes the polygraph look like a Jedi mind trick. One spike and boom, the examiner knows exactly what time you took a quarter from your mom's drawer back in 5th grade. But here's the reality. James Allen Made, a career polygraph examiner who ran thousands of tests between 1972 and 1979, he admitted he never once believed the polygraph could actually detect lies. Not once. Because it doesn't. What it does do is measure your body freaking out. Your blood pressure, your pulse, your breathing, your sweating, basically your nerves. And guess what? Everyone gets nervous. Even if you've got nothing to hide, just sitting there wired up makes you feel guilty. That's the trap. It's not a scientific lie detector. It's an interrogation tool. So let's kill the Hollywood myth and get real about what you're going to face when you walk into that room. All right, so what actually happens before you start the test? Most polygraphs start in a plain, boring office, no smoke, no mirrors. The examiner, they're going to walk you through the paperwork and they'll explain what's about to happen. Now, this part matters. Why? Because they're already sizing you up. The exam doesn't begin when the wires go on. It begins the moment you shake that person's hand. You'll go over your background packet again. Now, this is the danger zone. If you suddenly remember something new, like maybe you took some drugs that you forgot to mention, that means your original paperwork wasn't truthful. And now you've got a bigger problem than the polygraph. Here's the golden rule. What's in your background packet is your story. Stick to it. If you were honest up front when you filled it out, you don't need to add or subtract anything on polygraph day. Nervous? It's totally normal. Changing your answers, unless it's something that is completely plausible and understandable, it could be a career-ending mistake. Now comes the pre-test. This is when they explain the equipment and the ground rules. They'll strap you in. They'll put a blood pressure cuff on you to track your heart rate. They'll put chest bands on you to measure your breathing, and they'll put finger sensors on to pick up your sweat. It looks very intimidating, but remember, it's not reading lies, it's reading your body's stress. They'll usually run a quick practice test. Now, the examiner's going to tell you it's to get you comfortable with the process. But according to former examiners and even critiques of NSA's own polygraph program, the real purpose is to convince you that the machine actually works. It's called a STIM test or a numbers test. And basically, it's a psychological trick to build pressure before the real questions start. And that belief, the idea that this thing can read your mind, is what gives the examiner leverage. Then what they'll do is they'll break down 3 types of questions you're going to hear. Now, the first type of questions are irrelevant ones. Something like, hey, is your name John? Nobody cares. These are just throwaway questions used to get a baseline when you're not stressed. They're very important because they do measure your baseline. Next are the control questions. Now, something like, have you ever lied to someone who's trusted you? Yeah, of course you have. Everybody has. They expect some stress here, and they're going to use your reaction as the yardstick to measure your nervous system. And finally, the relevant questions like, have you ever used cocaine, or have you ever stolen anything? Have you ever committed an act of domestic violence? Now, these are the deal breakers. These tie directly into your background and whether or not you meet the hiring standards. What they're comparing isn't truth versus lies, it's how your body reacts across those categories. Nervousness is normal, showing big stress spikes on wrong questions, well, that's what can sink an applicant. Now, when the test begins, it's not rapid fire questioning or a long interrogation like you see in the movies. You're not giving long conversational answers. When you're hooked up, you're actually just giving all yes and no responses. Now, they may run that test 2 to 3 times to compare your reactions. And here's where psychology takes over. Now, this part is extremely important, so pay attention. If your chart shows a spike, or even if the examiner just says it does, they may lean in with something like, is there anything else you want to tell me? Or they might say something like, or ask a question like, you're showing stress during a specific question. You holding anything back? This happened to me on almost every polygraph I've ever taken. They said that I was showing some type of stress during a particular question, and I was being honest. So knowing now what I didn't know then, I really believe it was one last attempt to see if I'd change my answer. But here's why it matters. The examiner isn't really relying on that machine at that particular moment. They're relying on you. They're watching to see if you crack under pressure and change your answers, because the second you change your response, you've just admitted that your original paperwork wasn't truthful. And in the hiring process, especially in law enforcement, lying is often worse than the mistake itself. Remember, your background packet, it's your official record. If you suddenly add something new during the polygraph, it looks like you lied earlier. Now, are there exceptions? Yeah, absolutely, of course. Sometimes the reason why you're showing stress can be explained, and you'll be okay. But most of the time, applicants get themselves disqualified, not because of what they did years ago, but because they changed their story. So when the test is over, don't expect a gold star or a handshake followed up with a "congratulations, you passed." That's not how it works. The examiner will tell you the charts have to go through a review process, what they call quality control. Now, another examiner has to look at it. That part is true, but here's the reality. If they believe you were deceptive, you'll know that before you walk out. They may circle back, re-ask certain questions, or push you harder to see if you'll change your answers. That's basically an interrogation. Now, if you've been truthful and consistent, stand by your answers. Now, here's the part most applicants don't know. Sometimes even honest people get flagged as deceptive. If it happens to you, if that's you, don't panic. Just hit the like and subscribe button. Boom! Man, that was smooth. Actually, if it happens to you, you might be able to request a retest with a different examiner. Not all operators are created equal. Some are better trained, some are more experienced, and yep, some are just flat out wrong or bad at their job. So here's the bottom line. Be honest and tell the truth. Most agencies know that it's hard to find a perfect human being. We've all made mistakes. What matters is that you're truthful and consistent. Unless, of course, you're rolled up to the exam with 3 kilos and a dead body in the trunk, well then yeah, you're probably not going to get the job. And yes, there are automatic disqualifiers, as there should be. You should know what they are before you apply for the job. They're usually listed on the website, or you can find out from your recruiter or your background investigator. Now, if you want to dig deeper into how interviews and interrogations really work, check out my book, Extracting the Truth. I'll drop a link in the description. And if this video helped you, hit subscribe and share it with someone grinding through the process. I have tons of videos on this channel to help make your journey easier. Good luck.